like we never left after a little hiatus over the holidays. Old Chisholm, Texas Pete, and yours truly, Run It Back Jones, are here to break down the college football semifinals, do a little recap, maybe set the stage for these big matchups this weekend down in Texas, down in Miami. It's going to be a lot of fun. Old Chisholm's very own Notre Dame Fighting Irish have made it this far. So we're going to hear from him and, just run the gambit of his emotions to get to this point. And it's going to be a fun one. A lot to get off each of our chests. We've been holding stuff in, keeping it in the closet over the last few weeks. It's time to let it out. It's time to clean out the closet, boys. So let's do it. It's going to be a lot of fun. Before we get into that, Texas Pete is going to have a very special ad read to kick off the new year, 2025.
That's right. Very excited to be back recording with you guys. It's an absolute blast. Looking forward to previewing college football playoffs, semifinals. Anyways, here we go. We got a new ad, new sponsor here for us. Excited to have them on for the tail end of this season. They're a big one, so thanks for coming on board. Are you ready for the ultimate high-stakes adventure? The island is calling, and the drama is heating up. It's season 2 of Deal or No Deal Island, where the prize of a lifetime is just one risky choice away. Contestants face thrilling challenges, daring decisions, and shocking twists at every turn. Will they walk away with millions or leave nothing? Leave with nothing. With a mysterious banker lurking behind the scenes, the stakes have never been higher. Who will risk it all and who will play it safe? Get ready for the heart-pounding moments, jaw-dropping eliminations, and of course the infamous deal or no deal decision. Will you take the deal or will you gamble it all? Tune into Deal or No Deal Island Season 2, the game where the island isn't the only thing that's wild. Catch a new season on NBC Tuesday nights at 8, 7 Central or on Peacock the next day. And don't miss a minute of the action. I'll tell you guys what. Deal or No Deal Island. Dondi. If you know, you know. What a show. I mean, these guys just come up with just the most insane things to do week in and week out. And they just get characters you think you hate, you love by the end, and characters you love, you hate. I mean, it's just the perfect twist at every turn. But the one thing that's consistent is that nefarious banker.
Devious
out
banker.
To get him. He's out to get them. Yeah. Thanks for coming on, sponsoring this week's episode.
Yeah, I'm stoked. Dondi's back. It's going to be on the CNB. If you know what I'm talking about, you can either catch it live on cable or peek it on the cock afterwards and stream it up. So there's really no excuse to miss an episode of Dondi. Premiering tonight on NBC, next day streaming on the CNB. Woo! Fellas, I am feeling like Phil Weston. That's right, Phil Weston from Kicking and Screaming, Will Ferrell's character. Got a new coffee machine over the holidays, and I've been just glugging coffee left and right. Had a little cup of joe before this episode. My palms are sweaty. I'm ready to rock, and I have this just overwhelming sense of already anxiousness and nervousness about what's yet to come this weekend with these college football matchups. I mean, there's a lot on the line. We were able to enjoy good, not great games leading up to it. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. But first of all, it's great to have you boys back. I mean, I've missed you fellas.
Look at Absolutely stoked to be back, man. You're right, though. Should we talk about that? I mean, our first what is it, 3 or 4 games of the playoffs, total snooze fest. I was promised the greatest weekend in football, and it absolutely disappointed. I'm having trouble recalling exactly what games it were. These past 2 weeks have just been a total blur. Football's been on every single day. It's been fucking awesome. But now that I'm weaning off of it, I'm starting to do shit like detoxes and stuff like that. Like it's just not fun. Like just give me the 12, give me the noon beer and a shitty bowl game on, and I'm a happy man. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we're drowning in football, and sometimes it's hard to come up and catch your breath and get a little air. The NFL doesn't help. Over the holidays, they had games, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. College football is trying to do their best to spread it out as well. It's nonstop football at every corner. Is it too much, Old Chisholm? Or for, guys like us that live and breathe it, is it just right?
I think it's just right. I feel like because of how it's all just built to this point, it can feel overwhelming. I think we've all kind of had a come to Jesus moment at some point over the last few weeks where you're like, I'll take tonight off. Maybe I'll throw a little bit of Pawn Stars on, just get into it, melt my couch. But you got to stay the course.
Yeah, no doubt. You do got to switch it up a little bit. Like when you're watching it from game starting at noon, but then when you get into the night state, like I'm good for an easy 5-6 hours of football, no question. But then you get into the night state, and then it's the good games. So it's like, okay, well then I have to tune in. But then we had the first round of the playoffs, like the Ohio State Tennessee game, total snooze fest, went up 21-0, never really got close. That's the game you can flip off in the second half, put on some family friendly movie to get yourself in the holiday spirit, and then move on and just be checking the score on your phone. Because if it gets close again, by all means, it's going back on the TV. But you just gotta, it's like load management at that point. You don't need to be watching a 4-score game in the fourth quarter there.
Yeah, for sure. And something I think we've seen this year in the college football bowl season more than in years past is maybe embracing the wackiness of bowl season. We all know the Duke Mayo's Bowl kind of like took this. They're kind of the pioneers of this a little bit, dumping the mayo on the coach's head. Then I feel like the Pop Tarts Bowl last year took it another level, making an edible trophy, sacrificing the Pop Tarts at the end of the bowl game. And this year, I feel like all the brands are kind of trying to get in with their own a little bit hokey, but some kind of twist to make their bowl game a little bit more unique, a little bit more personal, bring it back to the brands. Bowl season's been a lot of fun since we have taken a little hiatus. Old Chisholm, was there one bowl game that stuck out to you as a personal favorite this year?
Honestly, so far, the Iowa State Miami game for sure. It was just fun. I'm a guy through and through who loves a defensive battle. Like Big Ten West football is what I live, eat, sleep, die on. But being able to watch just an absolute shootout one way to the other, it's a special treat that you don't get to have as often as you used to in college football. It still happens a fair amount, but really, I mean, it's like the Big 12 kind of, like they're the conference known for just having every game be one of those shootouts, or it's just a blowout because the other team can't stop turning the ball over. This felt very much like a Big 12 game. And I thought it was just kind of a fun thought experiment too, to be like, what if Miami was a Big 12 team historically? Like, what if?
That game really had everything that you could imagine in the modern bowl game era, right? So you have two teams that were pretty much all season vying for college football playoff spots up until, for Miami the last week, Iowa State also the last week, 2 conference championship losers. And then so you have a good matchup, and then you have the Pop-Tart aspect to it, right? Like the most blown out promotional support part of the bowl game with the stuff we talked about previously. And then you also have Cam Ward, a Heisman finalist, not playing in the second half of the game, which kind of shows a little bit of like the importance of these bowl games on a personal level to some of the players and the changes. Iowa State has one of their star receivers sitting out as well. But then between all of that, you still had this incredibly, to Chisholm's point, fun game, back and forth, shootout. The coaches are both getting into it, fired up, and what turned into a really fun, good football game. It really had it all of the modern bowl era.
Yeah, you absolutely hit it on the nose there. And as a Miami bettor in that game, I didn't. This is on me. I don't know if this was announced before the game, but were you guys aware if Cam Ward was only going to be playing half the game? Did you guys know that going into it?
I had no clue.
Yeah, neither did fucking I. And then I'm driving during this game. I'm traveling for the holidays, right? I'm on a really long road trip all day, pretty much. So the best thing to do to pass the time, travel when football's on or travel when there's a meaningful game on. You throw a nice little bet out there, and then you just ask. I turn around and I look at Mrs. Pete and I said, "What's the score of the Miami-Ohio State game right now?" Okay, good. So I'll just periodically be checking in on that. I get into the hotel room and I caught the fourth quarter. halfway through the third quarter, pretty much when I realized Cam Ward wasn't playing. I'm like, this is fucking ridiculous. I flipped out. Just brutal. It's just a bad feeling, man. This age of opt-outs is so insincere because you truly have no idea what team you're betting on. But still, Miami was able to hold their own, and it ended up being, really competitive and a good game still. Unfortunately,
there's some sharps right out there that probably
are
making a killing. Yeah, making a killing, right? But for your average, guy, you're just kind of pointing and guessing. I'd call out, the Toledo-Pittsburgh game is a personal favorite of mine. 6 overtime game, a lot of back and forth. That was a crazy game, and that's a fun one too because it's Pittsburgh and Toledo. But yet they capture, the attention of America, which is kind of what bowl games are about. The last thing I want to talk about, maybe before we jump into the college football playoffs and setting the stage for our final 4 remaining teams, is since the last time we've been on the airs, and I think we've been beating this drum a lot on this podcast as a threesome. SEC, maybe not as good this year, maybe doesn't deserve to have as many teams in. And you can't take everything you see from the bowl games as fact or creed, because as Texas Pete mentioned, you don't really know who these teams are coming out there. But it sure was satisfying seeing some of these SEC teams falter early in the playoffs, and especially a Bama team losing and just looking like it didn't really have a lot of signs of life offensively, which has been a problem for them throughout the year, against a Michigan team. That Michigan-Alabama game, I was rooting for Michigan pretty hard because it definitely helped solidify the narrative that we've been pushing, and the narrative a lot of people have been pushing against is that the SEC basically dominates college football, at least this year.
Yeah, I live in SEC country, so it was a lot of fun to absolutely dunk on them with Ohio State beating 2 in the playoffs there real quick. Or I meant Tennessee early on, but let's see. Sorry, I was okay, here we go. I got the records for it. SEC. I mean, they're still 8-6 in bowl games.
Right. It's a little overblown, maybe, but it's
Big Ten
still
9-5.
Yeah.
Losing some of the big bowl games, in the primetime slots, that's big. But yeah, dunking on the SEC folk just for being trash. Most notably, Alabama dropping to Michigan in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Holy cow, no one saw that one coming. That was a fun one. And then just you asked Chisholm the question, but I'm going to take it for myself as well. Some of your favorite memories from bowl season: Bielema, Illinois, and South Carolina going at it. That was an absolutely fun one to see. The shit-eating grin he had on his face after all these running the fat guys out when the refs are holding the ball due to substitutions. Got a good kick out of that one. Just an honorable mention to toss out there for you.
Love it. All right, well, Chisholm, should we start? I don't know if you have anything to add to that conversation before we move on, but
if it's cool with you guys, I'd love to just run through a few headlines that kind of came through over the course of the past few days. Honestly, a lot of our listeners I know being dedicated Iowa Hawkeye fans, big news in the portal today. This is debatably the best quarterback Iowa's had since Beat Hard. Mark Gronowski, former South Dakota State quarterback, officially transferring as a grad transfer. I personally love the build of this guy. He looks like he just played some small town 8-man ball and ran train. He went to South Dakota State for however many years now.
By way of the Thrill, Naperville.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, so he loves Lewis the Child.
Big time.
Yep.
Yeah, that's if you're from Naperville, you really like Lewis the Child, and you haven't done that much Molly, but you tell everyone that you have.
It's crazy.
And that's
crazy.
I love they all love Wiz Khalifa favorite song, the Thrill remix.
But they all secretly still love Roll Up.
Who doesn't?
Yeah,
good point.
What are we talking about here?
Aside from that, though, fun thing to point out here: he was 49-6 as the starting quarterback over the past 4 seasons.
Winner.
Let's go.
I'll take a winner. How's that sound?
2-time national champion. Boom.
Correct. That is another part. Sonny Smart, the father of Georgia's Kirby Smart, just passed away.
Whoa, hard transition there.
Yeah, took a fall in New Orleans early Saturday. He had a hip surgery. I guess there were some complications. Took a spill and passed away about 12:15 early
Rest in
Saturday morning.
peace.
So rest in peace. Also, though, Kirby.
And
Well, how's he doing? Somebody's got to check on him after taking that L on the chin. He took it like a champ, but then
are you talking about his father?
right after losing, like what, 2 days later, 3 days later, his father then dies. That's Adam, a tough week.
Adam, how do you deal with grief?
I deal with grief the same way everyone in my family does. You make a lot of jokes openly about it so that people don't think that you're actually grieving. You drink. Typically, you drink in more of I would say a social fashion, so that it's very public and people can see, oh, he's out and about, he's doing well, but actually inside, it's like it's just hurt by Johnny Cash, kind of playing over and over again. And then one day you just get over it. Yeah. One day you just get over it. One day it just kind of goes away. You just stop thinking about it. Yep. Exactly.
Why do you ask?
It's like herpes.
Well, maybe that's something you could give Kirby some advice for. I don't know how Kirby's doing. I'm sure the old ball coach is probably approaching tomorrow as he approached yesterday and the day before that. Looking to win football games any means possible. He's probably in somebody's living room right now eating a pot of gumbo and trying to get the 315-pound 17-year-old son to come and play for the Georgia Bulldogs.
There you go. Another couple headlines for everybody. This is more of a TP headline than anything else. Ex-Washington State coach Nick Rolovich loses his lawsuit against the school over his firing. He was recently brought in to Cal as an assistant and was going through a lawsuit, obviously, with the university. A lot of it just dealing with his failure to comply with the state's COVID-19 vaccine mandate. So not only did he get fired, but he also lost a lawsuit along the way. That's two quick L's for Mr. Rolovich.
Classic Texas Pete update.
What's that got to do with me?
You love Wazoo. Apple Cup is your cup.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Come on.
There's the bow for it.
We'll flip it into, I guess if you're a North Dakota State fan, here's a positive. They just barely edged out Montana State 35-32 for their 10th FCS title. Congratulations to North Dakota State. For those who listened, tailed us all year, you'll know we actually had a play on them against Colorado, and it covered. So also thank you to North Dakota State for being 1-0 this season.
Yes, sir.
With the Rent Money Boys. You guys are undefeated. Lastly, a couple key names declaring for the draft, all of them from Georgia: Jalen Walker, Michael Williams, Malachi Starks. Those will be fun names to see when their highlights pop up. But then the last big one that we have here is actually regarding the games this weekend. Thought it could be a good segue.
I got one that I thought for sure you were going to hit, Chisholm.
Well, then let's go ahead.
Very unlike you. Grayson McCall. That's right. Our favorite guy, Grayson McCall. Football career might be done on the field, but he's going to be on the sidelines next year for Coastal Carolina. They're bringing him back as an offensive analyst. We couldn't be more happy for our guy. You know what they say, 99% of college athletes go professional in something other than sports. Well, Grayson McCall, not Grayson Allen, is going professional in the sporting world. He's going to go on and be a head coach someday. And we're going to look back at it. Look back at it with a lot of aplomb and a lot of excitement, saying, hey, son, you see that guy right there, Grayson McCall? He used to sling it. Now he's the head coach for the Georgia Bulldogs, right? So, Chisholm, I thought you were going to hit that one for sure. Rare miss by you.
Fucking hilarious that you remember how to use the soundboard from the Rent Money Awards season. And for anyone that's listening right now, if you didn't go ahead and listen to that episode, it is well worth the watch. Download it for your next plane flight, I guess, too. It's a great
Are you on Delta or
an hour and a half,
yeah.
2 hours. It's just recapping basically the entire season. There's a lot of good laughs in there.
Yeah, I got to go back and look. I don't know if the collapse transferred over on the Spotify track. So I was really excited. I was in the car with Mrs. Chisholm on a 15-hour. No, it was probably closer to 13-hour drive home. We might have thrown it on in the car, hour 8. You know, you kind of start losing your mind a little bit.
Mrs. Chisholm's like, Adam, I just don't want to hear you talk anymore. Can we have some silence? Can we put something on the radio? And you're like, you know what? I got the perfect thing for you. Just an hour and a half of me babbling.
It's just Parker Titsworth. And it's just, it was great. It was good fun.
Then you got Chisholm presenting the juiciest ass award.
It was a good drive, good trip. She knocked out a lot of reading, so
good.
Yeah.
But awesome. last update, taking us into some of the games this weekend. This one could have major implications if he's not able to go. Abdul Carter, currently uncertain. His status is in limbo against Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl, coming up on Thursday night.
Why don't you tell the people a little bit about who Abdul Carter is? Maybe they're not locked into the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, current reigning Defensive Player of the Year. Left the Fiesta Bowl in the first half. He had a left shoulder injury that was pretty apparent. You could tell his arm was very heavily wrapped in the post-game celebrations and interviews, and he was fairly reluctant to reach for anything with that arm, according to sources that were around the locker room that night. It really does seem like this is come down to how does he feel before the game type of situation, how much he's able to practice during the week, said James Franklin. At this point, I don't think there's anything that is stopping him from playing, but it's going to come down to how effective is he able to play. You know, we'll see, end quote from James Franklin. Very interesting start to that. I thought he was going to just start throwing shade on his star edge rusher and be like, yeah, he could play if he wanted to, throw some dirt on it. But no, it sounds like they're really taking this seriously. What are your guys' thoughts on it looks like a top 10 pick in the draft next year?
I saw that he's projected right around there. I mean, it's a big X factor, right? ND hasn't had to sit back and sling it a lot so far, and we can maybe talk a little bit about both teams here and how they got to this point. But Riley Leonard against Penn State, we'll see how well this defense for Indiana or for Notre Dame holds up. I mean, they've been playing unreal ball, holding Indiana to 17 points in the very first game of the playoffs, and then a pretty solid Georgia team, sans Carson Beck to only 10. But if they have to sit back and throw the ball at all at any point, and Abdul Carter is not there to put pressure on the quarterback, that's a huge, huge gain for ND. I don't know how well Leonard's fared under pressure this year, Chisholm. Maybe you can kind of talk to that a little bit. I mean, he's a big guy. I'm sure he can stand in the pocket pretty well. But whenever you're out, the player of the conference on the defensive side of the ball, I mean, it's a huge, huge hole. Penn State's got the horses. They got the guys in the defensive end to maybe make up for that a little bit. But guys that can generate one-on-one pressure need help on that side that Abdul Carter's on. I mean, those guys just don't grow on trees, right? So whoever they have coming in to replace him is definitely not going to have the same level of impact. And so I think it's a huge factor for this game. And even if he plays but is limited, right, that makes a difference as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just one of the major repercussions of the playoff expansion, right? We're asking these players to play more games in a season than anyone has ever done in history. And not only do you have to do that, you have to do that at the highest level where the competition just gets better and better as you move on. So, I mean, I'm assuming this is going to be some sort of theme. I mean, they're 15 games into the season for Penn State, right? So you're going to be having guys that are getting knocked out along the way. And the same goes for the Notre Dame side of the ball. Everyone knows how banged up they are. They've had big stars falling out early in the season. And then you got right now running back Jeremiah Love, who had 10 carries for like 15 yards or something like that in the quarterfinal game. Like, obviously, this guy is completely banged up, or way more banged up than they're leading on. But I got an interesting fact here for you guys. Ooh. So each conference has their own injury reporting requirements that they have to do. So, for example, the Big Tens is they have to post an availability report up to 2 hours before kickoff. So you kind of know who's in, who's out, who's not in, who's not, whatever. You don't have to do that in the playoffs. So, for example, Penn State posted their availability report in the first round game against SMU, but they didn't do it in the Fiesta Bowl against Boise State. I'm not sure where Notre Dame falls in that spectrum, but I know Big Ten, SEC schools do it. But just being in the playoff, you do not have to. So there could be, some kind of ambiguity, as we kind of saw with some of these players who were going to be Cam Ward playing half of a game in a bowl game. So something to keep your eye out for, and player props, you know what I mean? So definitely be cautious if you're going to be taking any of these star players who have, lines set for them and other props.
I mean, I don't know about you guys. I'm not a huge player prop guy in college football compared to the NFL. I feel like people love the same game parlays in the NFL. But when you have these primetime matchups, right, it can be kind of hard to be like, oh, I'm going to sit down and watch this big game to not trying to come up with something. But holy cow, the market for player props in college football it's tricky. I would say I've not been successful. Yeah. We're still trying to pin that one down. Real quick, let's do a little recap of how did Penn State get to the Capital One Orange Bowl at Hard Rock Stadium down in Miami? Well, they did it, I would say, about as easy of a road as you're going to get, not to disrespect SMU or Boise State, but those are two programs that within the last 2 or 3 years were G6 type programs. And both good teams, but I think Penn State obviously overwhelmed each team with their physicality and their athletes, winning 38-10 over SMU and then 31-14 over Boise State. Kudos to Penn State. I mean, we've been preaching this all year. You got to go out there and play the games on the field and win them, and they've done it in dominating fashion. But if you're a Penn State backer, as excited as you are to be here, I don't think you've necessarily checked the James Franklin won a big game box just yet. That feels like this game tonight. Thursday night. Anything that you guys have seen? I mean, it's been mostly positives, right? I mean, they've outclassed their opponents both games. But anything you've seen over those last two games that your takeaways or just tickled your balls a little bit?
I mean, no, they won how Penn State wins games. That's against lesser opponents. They take care of business. They don't necessarily let it get close, and you have to come from behind, although they've proved this season that they've been able to do that against USC when they were down, I think it was 2 or 3 possessions in the second half. So they are capable of it against a somewhat formidable opponent. But these first 2 rounds against SMU and Boise State, these are the types of teams that they beat on, that they get their national prominence from. You know what I mean? It's the big old names that they have trouble with. And I think it's at the biggest stage. I'm not going to bash. A quarterfinal win is a quarterfinal win, right? That's
absolutely.
A good win when you look at the day. But you're right. This isn't the big one, and I think that's coming up here. Obviously, the semifinal with the trip to the national title game on the line.
And that's what makes this matchup so fun, right? I feel like both sides. I mean, I would give Notre Dame the credit of, hey, they won the big one against Georgia, Old Chisholm. I'm sure you felt just phenomenal and felt vindicated. But ND's made it to the Final Four a handful of times, on a couple of different occasions in this college football playoff era, yet to make it to the championship game, I believe. So this is that next step, right? Everything from here on out is going to be entering new waters. Chisholm, what are your thoughts maybe just on kind of how Notre Dame has gotten to this point?
I think these are 2 teams that on paper are pretty similar. One-loss teams coming into the playoff. They both took care of business in both of their first 2 playoff games, and they're both teams that are driven by their defense, but have capable offenses that can both run and pass the ball, but lean much heavier to the run. They would not prefer to air it out unless they absolutely have to. And we really haven't seen what that looks like from either team, aside from, to your point, TP, the USC game for Penn State. But NIU game with Notre Dame, like they're such a different team now. I think that part of them and that ability for them to go out and, just shit a brick, that's still there. I think that game did ultimately the biggest thing for them, which I think is kind of the opposite of where Penn State is at from a mentality standpoint. And consider it a reach, whatever, but hear me out. Penn State reminds me a lot of, weirdly, the Detroit Lions pre-Dan Campbell, where Dan Campbell, when he came in, he had to re-educate them on what it felt like to win and what it felt like to be a winner and a champion, and to go out and to take care of business, and the way that you carry yourself is different. and all of these things. I feel like Penn State has just been little brother for so long, and maybe it's a James Franklin culture thing. I wouldn't be shocked at all if it is. Just look at the guy. There's something wrong in the locker room. There's something wrong with the program that doesn't allow them to go that next inch, right? Like this is a season where anyone with a brain could have looked at Notre Dame and said, oh, the playoff expansion, creating more parity across college football, that will benefit Notre Dame, right? They're not going to compete with a lot of those super teams of the past that are, one of 6 teams. But you throw them against Penn State, you throw them against, these teams, that's where it gets interesting. So I think this is going to be a very similar game to what we just saw last week against Georgia in terms of the defense for Notre Dame. They're going to have to shut down the run and force Drew Aller to pass. Yeah. And his favorite target is Tyler Warren. So can Jack Kaiser, whoever they want to throw out from a linebacker spot, can they man up with Tyler Warren? That'll be the matchup.
And maybe Notre Dame got that monkey off their back last week, right? In that Georgia game. But I think a lot of what you said about Penn State could apply to ND as well.
100%.
In terms of the big game. This Notre Dame defense is absolutely swarming to the ball. Both playoff games, they were shutting teams down and killing the first option. And I don't know if ND's offense even looked that good against a stout Georgia defense.
No,
they didn't.
The special teams and the defense were both incredible. Maybe just speak a little bit to that defense and what they're doing so well and why they're a fun team to watch. Maybe the best on that side of the ball left in the playoffs.
Yeah. Go ahead, take this real quick. But one thing I noticed just from a pure eyeball test perspective, Notre Dame was swarm tackling so well against Georgia. And the reason I knew, because I bet ETN's under prop, and the fact that it looked like it'd be like a 3 or 4 yard gain when he finds like a little hole, outside or something like that. They would hold him to 1 or 2 yards. Like they were swarming, not letting him fall forward. And those are the kind of attributes that are just winning football. You know what I mean? You're going to bend a little, but you're not going to break. And you're able to get everyone rally over there. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to put that one out.
You're totally fine. And I sent this into a couple of group chats, actually, watching the game, like first quarter. Because I obviously I know what this defense looks like. And I know that a lot of people tuning into this game that might not have seen Notre Dame play recently or watched them play very intently are, for the most part, a lot of them are Iowa fans. They know what a good Phil Parker defense looks like. Al Golden, in my mind, has the exact same role. He has the exact same ability as a coach at a collegiate level to defensively create enough passion within his players to have that swarm mentality, but also he allows them to utilize their athleticism without inhibiting them in the game plan. It's a lot of pro style defensive schemes, the blitzes that they're doing, the way that they're covering and shadowing for different things too has been really interesting. Like there was a huge fuss. You guys remember the play where Georgia at Texas did this crazy line shift? It was like perfectly in sync, and it caused this crazy play. Those are the types of things that Notre Dame is doing slightly more subtly, just about every play, every other play. Really make sure you guys watch the movement and the communication from Jack Kaiser this next game. It looks exactly like Jay Higgins running a Phil Parker defense. He just doesn't have a secondary who's willing to tackle. This secondary is. That's the difference.
Last thing on ND here, then maybe we can get into the picks for this game, or I don't know if Chisholm has any more muscle on this specific matchup. Mitch Jeter, a guy that's been at times a liability, the kicker for Notre Dame this year, had a great game against Georgia, was putting them through. Each time he came up to go for a kick, though, the announcers were giving you some trepidation in their voice, like, this is a guy that's been struggling. He's coming back from injury. And each time he would, he put it through. In a game like that against Georgia, in a game like this coming up against Penn State, in a game, if they were to win, I'd expect them to play in the national championship as well. it's a game on the margins. It's a special teams game. It's defensive oriented, possession on offense with the ball, probably not hitting on necessarily a lot of big plays. Where's your confidence level in Mitch Jeter going into this weekend as an ND guy? I mean, it had to feel great to watch last week against Georgia.
Dude, it felt great to watch against Indiana. Like,
Yeah,
I don't
true.
think you guys understand how brutal it was. Our other kicker that we've had is a 30 or a 31-year-old former Army Reserves sergeant who came back to go to college, and he's like just casually our backup place kicker. You can tell that his leg is 31 years old when he goes out there. You're like, this just looks uncomfortable for you. This doesn't look like fun. It kind of feels like that should be a Rudy type movie made in the future. Hopefully he just went and got absolutely plastered and he's just super smart and didn't need to study or anything. I would watch that. But I think the biggest thing that I'm going to be focused on in this one too, with Mitch Jeter in particular, is like you said earlier, Jack, and like I was kind of hinting toward but didn't explicitly state, if you're playing complementary football, you need to have special teams. You need to have a field goal kicker that within
touchdown return helps.
Right, exactly. To the same extent, right? Penn State, they look like they're killing teams on paper, but Drew Allers only had 3 touchdown passes, and all of them were against Boise State through 2 bowl games.
When you say it like that, it doesn't sound as good. But when you say, yeah, last game you had 3 touchdowns, sounds pretty good.
But also, when you say that and then you realize that they have 6 interceptions on defense.
That is nuts. Yeah. Holy cow.
They have 6 interceptions through 2 games, both of them playoff games, mind you guys. 2 of those 6 were touchdowns.
Yeah, with a name like Maddox Madsen, I'd be less surprised to see him on the casting couch someday than on the sidelines on Sunday.
Maddox Madsen or Malachi Nelson, and they went with Maddox.
Oh man. Well, let's jump into, I guess, our picks for this game. Thursday night, there's a small chance. I listed at 65% chance that I'm in the building for this game down there in Hard Rock.
Let's go.
If I'm down there, Adam, I'll be donning the navy and gold and rooting on your Fighting Irish. This is the same pick I had against Georgia for Notre Dame, the same pick I'm going to have this week. I'm going to take the under in this game. Once again, I think it's going to be complimentary football. I'm not sure if either team – I feel like both teams are comfortable kind of getting into that game with each other. I don't know if either team is necessarily going to be the one that's trying to air it out or be up-tempo or play outside of their comfort zone, which I think leads to kind of maybe a lower scoring game. And then I'm also going to go with ND. One thing that I would caution, at least for myself, ND is at 1.5. Chisholm, give the over-under for me. I think it was like
45.5.
45.5. Pretty low total. I'm still going to take the under. It does make me – the only thing that makes me nervous about this is just I do think that those extra few days is pretty beneficial for 2 teams. Like Texas Pete mentioned, they're playing a lot more games than ever before. Both these teams have played 2 games in the college football playoff. After the tragedy that took place down in NOLA, Notre Dame had a game get pushed back a day. So another 2 days less rest than Penn State, which I think adds up. And more than that, obviously it's a super emotional trip down there too. And, when something like that takes place and your game prep is altered, there's a lot of emotion that goes into that. You're staying another night at the hotel, another day at the hotel, pretty much cooped up, trying to buy time. So that concerns me a little bit. I think that is a factor in this game, but we're going to go with ND and we're going to take the under from my perspective.
Yeah, I think those are good plays for sure. I'm on both of those. I also really like I'd have to double check what the line is currently, but I think Penn State's team total under is something that I'm very, very curious to look into. My favorite play as of right now is under 45.5 in this game. To your point, Jack, it's going to be very, very similar to how it was against Georgia. Notre Dame isn't a team that goes out and puts up a bunch of points because that's how they win games. They can win games in a multitude of ways, but the majority of those include time of possession, dominating special teams and defense to make sure you have really good field position, and just honestly kind of just being a pain in the ass of your opponent, pestering, being a nuisance the entire game and just wearing them down. That's the other thing I would point out too, is the depth of Notre Dame is something I've been really impressed by. A lot of true freshmen stepping up, filling big time shoes. When Benjamin Morrison went down, Leonard Moore stepped up in a huge way. Riley Mills going down. You have, a senior finally getting to see the field with Gabe Seviano Jr. There's a lot of different moving parts and moving pieces. There's, I think, 7 total starters right now for Notre Dame on both sides that are out, that have been out for the season. They've just had a next man up mentality. I feel like that is going to carry over with a trip like they just had in New Orleans. I think Notre Dame's specialty is less about the type of football that they play. It's more about the type of men that they build. That's always going to be like their foundation in recruiting and everything. And I feel like because of that, the Notre Dame man gold standard mentality, I don't know if there's a better team in all of college football to be going from a New Orleans trip to their next game than a Notre Dame team. Like, not to kind of take it there, but like this is a school that they want to pump out men, not football players. Like, if they happen to go to the NFL, great. But
wow, spoken like a true ND guy. They're here for their education. They're here for the walk through campus before the big game. Texas P, what do you think?
They might come back 30 years later, but they come back.
I kind of double your sentiment there. So we talked about it in the game preview. Both these teams run a very similar game plan. They rely on kind of their defense in order to set them up in good positions, win the field, win the the field battle there. But just a couple stats that stuck out to me: Notre Dame 3rd in the nation in takeaways. They have 18. Penn State top 20 with like 10 or 11 or something like that. So whoever's gonna be able to force turnovers, neither one of these teams offensively is really able to generate shot plays or to call their shot plays. They kind of rely on breaking a big run out or breaking a couple tackles and yards after catch to do that. So I feel like whoever's able to steal 1 or 2 of those, and that could come in the form of special teams or like a sack fumble or something like that. Whoever's able to generate 1 or 2 of those is going to come out on top. I think this Notre Dame defense is buzzing. I think last weekend Marcus Freeman outcoached Kirby Smart.
He did.
He absolutely did, and that's something you notice in the small details. There was like a 4th down or something where he did that, shifty line thing and was able to get him to jump. So I just think they're humming on all levels. So I like the fact that it's under a field goal here. So I'm going to be laying 1.5 on Notre Dame. I'd lead in the under. I'm not making this a play, but just because we mentioned it, these guys aren't necessarily able to generate their plays that could really run it up. But at the same time, who knows? So I'm going to be staying away from the total line, but I'm going to ride with you guys here on Notre Dame -1.5.
There it is. All right, let's move on to the Saturday game, the Goodyear Cotton Bowl Classic. This is Texas and Ohio State. Another little trend that, I don't know if a trend or just something to note, all 4 teams with byes did lose last week. So all the teams are going to be playing the 3rd game this week, and the championship teams will be playing their 4th game the following week. Texas has had a little bit more of a stressful route. Maybe we start with Ohio State because I feel like they've been a major story of the playoffs, including Jeremiah Smith. I mean, holy cow, this is like everything you wanted from Ohio State when you look at the offensive talent they have on the field. And I think it just reiterates even more like Ryan Day has some kind of weird Michigan block in his head because they try and play one way against Michigan and they play a separate way against everybody else. And that separate way is let's get the ball in our playmakers' hands. And holy cow, does it look good when they're rolling like that? I mean, Tennessee and Oregon are 2 teams that people thought pretty highly of. So, what are your impressions of Ohio State? I mean, coming into this week and what you've seen from them that you like? It's been fun ball to watch.
On the inverse of what we just talked about for the Penn State Notre Dame game, Ohio State's bread and butter is spreading it out wide, getting it to your 5-star playmakers on the outside and letting them go do their thing, make plays in space and score touchdowns, go up 21-0 early in the first quarter. I mean, they just we're not going to go back to that Michigan game because they just completely went away from that game plan. But they implemented it against Tennessee where they jumped out to a 3-score lead early in the first half. And then the exact same thing against Oregon. Scores like 42-0 before you could even get another beer from the fridge. I mean, Jeremiah Smith is looking absurd. He had 7 catches for 186 yards, 2 touchdowns. He could go anywhere he wanted on that field that day. And you got to give credit to Will Howard. He was getting the ball in his playmakers' hands. Granted, they were wide open. Granted, they were making crazy catches.
But
they were coming down with it. He's playing well.
More than well, honestly. He's probably been playing the best out of anybody here, quarterback-wise. It helps when you got the guys he has around him, but kudos where kudos is due.
By far.
Absolutely. And then you go on the flip side here. We got Texas. A total scare against Arizona State in the quarterfinals. Can we talk about this here? The University of Texas. Holy shit. They were in a double OT against Arizona State. Cam Scatterbo damn near put the entire university.
Can I give a hot take? Cam Scatterbo just rubs me the wrong way. I'm not a fan.
I agree. I 100% agree. I can't stand him. He's a scumbag. He's a piece of shit.
Go.
Everything I don't like about a person is personified in him. Not necessarily his football attributes, just I just don't like him.
He just seems like him at all. Every dude that's ever been like their drink of choice is a vodka lemonade is Cam Scatterbo in my mind.
Yeah, man.
I don't know.
There's something deep rooted in there, but
there's something
off.
Rooted. There's something off. I'm glad you guys see this too. I'm glad we're not on an island here. The Red Money boys are aligned, and when the stars align, usually we got it picked. Usually we got it pointed out. And
all I'm saying is, and I think this is probably, I mean, this isn't the root cause, but it is one of the effects. Cam Scatterbo as a child at a young age was 100% the kid that took a bite out of the foam Nerf footballs. Like it was always him every time.
Yes. And that's good.
This is what they grow up to become. It is just absolute debauchery on the sidelines.
Young Cam Scatterbo, like if you were passing your birthday party invites out in your homeroom class, and you'd pass it to him or something like that, you invited him to your birthday party, he would go up to the kids that weren't invited and be like, hey, did you get an invite to Texas Pete's birthday party? You know what I mean? Like that kind of menace, just causing chaos. I don't know.
There's something about it because he plays this. His play style is like tough and gritty, right? But then he's also like a me guy, which doesn't always like. That just rubs me the wrong way.
Huge only child, single mother energy.
100%.
I would agree with that. I would agree with like at the bar, Arizona State. He's hitting on some girls. Maybe it's Mrs. Pete, and Mrs. Pete, great girl, goes, actually, I'm with Texas Pete right over there. He's grabbing us drinks. And he goes, but do you know who I am? Like, do you know that this is Cam Scatterbo?
Yes.
And you come back over and you're like, hey, what's going on? Cam, pretty like cool to see you. And he just doesn't even recognize, doesn't even acknowledge that you're there. Doesn't do any of that. It just keeps trying to mac in front of you. You're like, okay, dude, what is this?
Yeah,
like,
I think that's what it is. Also, partially because, I mean, for the most, all three of us are here like taller, lanky people, and then he's like a short, stout muscle hamster. You know what I mean? Like just completely different builds. We don't jive. We're not the same human. Anyways, crazy game though. Texas pulled it out, absolutely stepping up in the second OT, throwing a dime on the first play, converting the 2-point conversion. From there, you can kind of obviously see the rest. Arizona State wasn't able to pull it out, but for a second there, yeah.
I'm okay with it not being targeting.
Yeah, same. I don't think it was forceful.
Is it targeting by rule? Maybe. But, like, since when did we want our games to be decided by a flat? Like,
correct.
Everybody that's upset about it not being called are the same people that would be upset by it being called. It's just the people that are always going to be upset about the refs no matter what the call was. And so there's really it's a lose-lose situation. And you know what? If the guy's making a football play, which I don't think there was anything malicious about the hit, the guy was making a football play, knocking a dude with the game on the line, like just laying a guy out. That's fucking football, man. Football's a contact sport. Football is physical, and I was okay with them not calling it. I know people on Twitter and probably at your local water cooler were upset, but I was okay with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think it was targeting. Like is there head-to-head contact? Yes. Was it like it was just purely as a result of two guys making two football moves? Like, you can't punish a guy for because he had his head up. His face mask is what hit the other guy's helmet first. His head would have been on the left side by his shoulder if you go watch the replay. It was just a weird play. And yeah, you guys nailed it on the head. The fact that anyone in the right mind after the, what was it, Georgia Tech Miami, or is Virginia Tech Miami game that ended on the Hail Mary getting overturned at the very end, like, everyone lost their minds about that. But now all of a sudden this call should have been overturned, or, it should have been a targeting. Like, you can't ever please anyone, especially in college football. Everybody has too many opinions, and that's kind of what makes it fun. But
that's the point.
All I know is less playoff games with ACC refs would be better for everyone. I don't think the ACC should be considered a Power 4.
Maybe not. That's a discussion for another day, but I agree. ACC refs, bottom of the barrel out of the refs. They just don't deal with the big moments as much, right? Like, how many times do those ACC refs look up in the air during the middle of the game and see a Goodyear blimp, right? They're probably shitting their pants when they see that Goodyear blimp at the game. They didn't know what to do with themselves. They just don't have the big game credentials. So keep them away. Last thing here, I guess, what's your guys' confidence level in Quinn Ewers right now? I mean, they've had 38 points and 39 points, but it's been a little shaky from Quinn. So I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts?
He's got the big game experience, though, so that's like one aspect that he has going for him. Like, it's not like it's his first time playing in the playoffs. Like, he's been there before. He's done it. And has he necessarily came out on top? No, but just having the exposure, I think, is valuable at some level. He's definitely not playing how I thought he would. If you asked me 2 weeks ago, I don't know his exact stats. He could be producing, but just the eyeball test isn't stacking up. He's not managing the game properly to the point where he doesn't have to go to double OT against Arizona State. Like, Texas even jumped out early in that game. You know what I mean? From there, you should be on cruise control. You have a 14-point buffer. Like, you can make some mistakes. You don't have to just go, put on the Superman cape and win the game for your team.
Yeah.
But I think he has the ability to do so. I don't know necessarily what the game plan is going to be for Texas going into this, but they weren't able to rush the ball effectively at all against Arizona State.
Yeah.
They averaged 1.9 yards per carry versus their season average of almost 5. So what is Ohio State going to do? Are they going to stack the box and try and repeat what Arizona State kind of did and, mitigating the run game for Texas? But then at that same point, I think I might trust Ewers to go ahead and win the game for me. I know he hasn't necessarily shown it, but I don't know. I don't know which devil I would go with in that
He
scenario.
got it done. Here's what I'll say about Ewers. I think one word that describes him very well. He's definitely a gamer. He's definitely a gamer. You put him in critical situations. He seems to come through when the pressure is highest. He does have that experience, as Texas Pete said. Chisholm, do you think over under 3.5 snaps for Arch Manning in this upcoming game? Over under, if you had to take one. 3.5
I would
snaps.
say under. I like 3. If that.
Against Arizona State.
I could see them bringing in Arch in like red zone situations. I was just going to say, I think Quinn is doing exactly what he's being asked to do. I think the scheme has been terrible. Like, the talent is there for Texas. They have as talented of a team as Ohio State. I would venture to say. I think some of the guys they have on defense are absolute dogs. Their offensive line on paper should be better.
What, the best in the nation?
Yeah, they've balled out all year, and they have the reigning defensive back of the year in Jahdae Barron. They have Malik Muhammad. The Michael Taft kid, he was a walk-on Austin kid. He's turned out to be an absolute stud. Like, the defense is really, really fun to watch. It is
defensively.
It is, and even on offense too. Their wide receivers are insane. Like, they're
are they though?
They're not as dynamic. Like, they all kind of remind me of each other. They don't really spread the field. They don't have like a really, really tall, lanky speed threat and like a really big physical guy, but they kind of run with more Miami Dolphins style wide receivers. They're short, they're quick, they're shifty. They want to get, the bubble screens. They want to run as many RPO type situations as they can. It's soft. Like there's too many traces of Big 12 still on this Texas team where if they try to play SEC style ball with those traces of Big 12, that's how you give up big plays. That's how you give up touchdowns. That's how games like Arizona State stay as close as they are. But the Michigan game, for example, if you're playing a tough, gritty, physical game, you're playing SEC style ball, you're not doing all of this stupid shit like trying to run multiple fake handoffs before looking out into the field to then run your play action. Like those are the times when Texas looks like one of the best teams in the country. It happened early in the season. Everything in my brain, my soul is saying Ohio State should kick the absolute dog shit out of Texas. But regression to the mean for Ohio State and inverse of that for Texas, I think is bound to happen. It's just, does it happen this week? That's the question right now.
Yeah. Everything you said, not going to disagree with any of it. Texas has yet, in my opinion, to play a 4-quarter game all season long.
Correct.
And they pulled it out in OT and kudos, but that would have been a major collapse last week. Major collapse.
I will say, though, not a lot of teams have played 4-quarter games this year.
Yeah. Ohio State's just played 2 in a row. I'll say that.
No, they did not. That game was over. It was 34-0 at the end of the first, 31-0 or at the end of the half. Like that, yes, they played 4 quarters and they played well for 4 quarters, but the same level of intensity was gone. Yeah, that's not a 4-quarter game. I know what you mean, Turner. That's what I'm coming from.
Okay, that's fair.
Here's a sabermetric for you guys back at home. Will Howard 0-4 versus Texas. That's right.
Whoa.
His time back at K-State. 0-4. Putting it out there.
Part of me, this is how selfish I can be as a fan. I love Will Howard, Big 12 champion with Kansas State. If he wins a championship with Ohio State, he's no longer a Kansas State guy, even though he spent 4 years there. And I would just hate for us to lose him to the sands of time, to the sands of the transfer portal. Will, I hope you ball out. Will, I hope you play well every game. But we can't lose you, man. We can't lose you. We need when you have I don't know if he's a Jersey retired guy at Kansas State, but he's not too far off. You don't win a lot of Big 12 championships at Kansas State, to be honest.
No.
And if you're the starting quarterback of that team, your name will live on, for a long time amongst that fan base.
So the step below Jersey retirement is like Ring of Honor inductee?
Yeah.
He's definitely in the Ring of Honor. I mean, he could be in the Hall of Fame, too, because you don't have to get your jersey retired just to be a part of, the Athletics Hall of Fame. So he's probably an Athletics Hall of Fame guy, not a jersey, not a nameplate, on the side of the stadium guy.
Correct. Yeah.
If he stayed, maybe, but he would have just been backing up Avery. I got a couple of thoughts on this one. I'll give them very briefly and then let you guys start giving some picks here. Ohio State has probably been, even though they had the weird loss against Oregon, and then they, kind of got vengeance for that in the Rose Bowl, but the weirder loss being Michigan, we've seen this happen. It's college football. There's certain games that teams just aren't going to play well in. NIU for Notre Dame, example there. Also, Ohio State for Penn State. Georgia twice for Texas. You're just going to have bad matchups, bad games, whatever. But over the course of the season, Ohio State is averaging 36.4 points per game offensively and allowing 12.1 points per game defensively. That is a decent 24-point margin on average that honestly blows my mind that they've had 2 losses on their schedule with numbers like that. But at the same time, when you see their efficiency, the way that, like you guys said, they've run their offense by just having Will Howard give the ball to somebody who was a 5-star at one point, and giving them as much open field as possible tends to work. Their defense is something that I think people like. You know they're good, you think they're good, but until you actually sit down and watch them, I think Jack Sawyer is one of my favorite players to watch in college football. He's very Aiden Hutchinson like. Complete game record. He's going to be very fun. And if they're in peak form, if they're playing nasty, if they're playing physical in the trenches, Texas is in for a really long day. But Texas, I feel like we've kind of been shitting on them a little bit here. They've had a very, very impressive season. Like they've only lost to one team this whole year, and that was Georgia. Arizona State, obviously not a great look, giving up a 17-3 lead at halftime, taking it into a double OT. But Quinn's pretty much right there with Will, even having missed time. He's got 29 touchdowns, just under 3,200 passing yards to Will Howard's 32 touchdowns and 3,400 passing yards.
Adam, just to throw this in there, talk about Jeremiah Smith, because I think he's been the most electrifying player of the college football playoffs. Yeah, I don't know if it's even close. Like that's a guy that every casual fan has walked away with like knowing this guy, like knowing this guy's name.
No, and I think a lot of the allure around him too is the fact that he is a freshman doing this. Like if he was a sophomore, he wouldn't get as much coverage because somebody else might on Ohio State who's maybe a more fun storyline.
I mean, you had Ibuka as a Heisman finalist going into the year, and he's not even the best receiver on his own team.
Right. Exactly. You're not wrong at all. He's been insane. Damn near put up 200 yards and 2 tutties on top of that against Oregon. I don't know if a team could be riding higher than Ohio State after the way that they lost that game in Oregon during the regular season. To go out and just spread cheeks and absolutely poop on them like that had to have been just one of the best feelings. I mean, 30 plus to nothing at halftime.
Couple logs.
To a team that beat you by a point, by 2 points. Good Lord.
Oh man.
That's the stuff. But yeah, I think Texas's thing too though is Quintravian Wisner. You guys know that name? Yeah. He is aside from last week, I should say, he's really helped out the running game in a big way. Jadon Blue was the senior back that took over the starting spot when CJ Baxter went down preseason. Jadon Blue had a bit of a fumbling issue. He was a great back, good ball carrier vision, could not hold on to the ball. Wisner, I believe, is a true freshman, might be a redshirt freshman. He's helped them out a lot. I can't stand his helmet. I want to have a quick discourse on gear that players wear that pisses you off. Could be a style of helmet. Could be
Wisner's helmet?
Quintravian Wisner. It's what is it? The Visus trench helmet, the Visus 2, or is it the Axiom? Like, bro, just throw on a fucking speed flex. Okay. Like, put on a speed flex. What are we trying to do here?
Yeah.
If you wanna be,
helmet's doing it for me.
Micah Parsons has a weird one too. I'm like, if you're a defensive edge player, like it's different. If you're a running back, it's like the Devin Brown kid or whatever his name is for Ohio State, who's a quarterback but number 33. You're like, I'm upset. Internally, I now despise you purely because the number that you wear is unorthodox, and I don't like him.
All right. Going back to equipment talk, I think it got really out of hand during like 2014 to 2015.
Out of hand.
Those seasons. Like when you would see the crazy miscolored leg and arm sleeves with the armbands over the arm sleeve type thing. I think they toned it down a little bit. I definitely think they toned it down. I didn't have any issues with equipment this year. I mean, now that you pointed out, I mean, I could nitpick a little bit saying, I don't like his helmet as a running back. You know what I mean? But you put it on a dual Carter, I think it'd be dope. But other than that, no, nothing really stuck out.
Could tune back up again. There used to be a important month in this country. It was Breast Cancer Awareness Month. They wear pink in the NFL. Sometimes that trickled down to college athletics. Hand up, guys. I forgot about breast cancer this year. Luckily, no one was personally affected by breast cancer, near and dear to me, in this past 12 months. And until this conversation, frankly, I forgot that breast cancer was still out there afflicting people, women, all ages, shapes, sizes. So I do want to just put a friendly reminder back out there that breast cancer is something we should be aware of. And if the NFL players aren't going to wear pink next year during these podcasts, we're on video. I will be wearing pink in support of breast cancer awareness. That's a running back Jones stance. It's a commitment. It's a promise. We'll wear pink next year, and that'll be that.
Print it.
All right, love it.
Real men wear pink.
We got the Cotton Bowl in Arlington, Texas. Everyone's saying, oh, it's a home game. It's a home game for Texas. Don't they split the fucking tickets 50-50? So, you think Ohio State's not going to travel down to a very readily accessible place? You know what I mean? They're going to be there. They're going to have their exact allotment of tickets. It's going to be 50-50 in the stadium. Yeah, okay, most of the Texas fans are able to drive 2 hours or drive a few hours, and you're still getting a hotel room. Or if you live up the street, you're able to come in just for the game. But it's not like a major impact. You know
Texas
what I mean?
Pete is a Texas Pete. I disagree. I've been scoping tickets for this Hard Rock game on SeatGeek. There's over 3,000 listings, which equates to about, if you're looking at it, over 10,000 tickets on SeatGeek alone. So if you're looking at all the different sites, there's probably 15,000 seats out there for the taking. I think that's a lot. And I would guess that most of those are going to be filled by Texas fans. These Texas fans have been bleeding and looking for success for a while. Ohio State, on the other hand, they've had it for a little bit. A lot of people have done their traveling. That is one thing that I think is interesting. We saw last week that ticket prices were pretty cheap across the board for these games, just because a lot of fans maybe traveled or paid for the ticket for the home game or went to that game. And then they're holding out for this week's game, right? Where it's well, fuck, if we win that game, then I'm going to want to go to the semifinal game. And so I don't want to, it's just nonstop, right? It's a lot of games. With that being said, I do think Texas Pete, and this is to your credit here, I think that one Ohio State fan probably makes the amount of noise as 2 Texas fans.
Is that a shot at Texas's environment? I mean, I
think that they're a little bit more laid back, not as much about that loud and rowdy as an Ohio State guy will be. 7 beer
any
speed.
Midwest. I was gonna say any Midwesterner is gonna be rowdier than someone from any other part of the U.S. in a football or a game day type of environment. I will say though that a lot of times, if you're at DKR and it's not a big get up, stand up type game, the faithful look a lot like this. And it not a
resting their arms on their belly.
Yeah, and they're all just sitting there. I'm like, hey, run down to the field, let Sark know what your thoughts are, and then get back up here and have a beer, enjoy yourself. I don't understand why we're taking it so seriously. They're very much was it Glenn Powell just came out, said that. What was the exact quote?
While you're looking that up, Texas Pete, you're right. The fans are traveling by car, and Ohio State fans might have to fly in. Well, the most important fan, maybe a mascot, will be there with ease. Bevo will be in the building for the Sugar Bowl. That's huge wind in the Longhorn players' sails. Buckeyes luckily do not have a live mascot that they have to, be concerned or worried about their safety, because we all know Bevo's a little bit of a loose cannon these days in his old age. A little bit ornery.
It's got a lot of angst.
A lot of angst for sure. Probably from a few of those situations we talked about his predecessors have ran into or found themselves in. Chisholm, you find the quote?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now.
What was it?
Okay,
go ahead.
Yes, Glenn Powell would trade a Golden Globe for a Texas national championship.
Where the fuck does this guy get off? We all know he wants to be the new McConaughey, but
he's trying really hard.
Texas fandom.
I will say he's doing a pretty good job of it. If we're calling a spade, coming off of the 2024 that he just had, He's youth. He's got that on McConaughey for sure. Ralph, I will say, the godfather of the Pop Off Podcast Network, did make sure to point out that he would do that for a Golden Globe, but not an Oscar. So for all the cinephiles out there that also happen to be degenerate gamblers, you're welcome.
It's a very small mashup, I feel like.
Yeah, but we
last
all here.
Question before we maybe just get into our picks. Let's say hypothetical Texas blows out Ohio State 31-7. Never really a game. Is Ryan Day the head coach of Ohio State next year?
So that's something I was definitely interested in polling. So obviously the Fire Ryan Day discourse was extremely prominent after the disappointing loss against Michigan, that team, to end the season. So I'm fortunate enough to have a real good friend of mine who is an Ohio State alum.
Is this CV?
And, yeah.
Alum's maybe a stretch, but go ahead.
Alum is a stretch, but hey, they'll never know. Anyways, I had a very close friend of mine who was fortunate enough to attend the University of Ohio State, the Ohio State University. And then I asked him, I shot him a quick text before we were taping tonight. I said, Chief, where are we at on the Fire Ryan Day discourse? He said,
Caleb.
Yep, win the natty and then cut his fucking ass, was his exact quote. So
wow.
They're still just staying there for, obviously, you got to beat that team, but they're just so fortunate to be able to be in this opportunity, or to be able to be in this position, guaranteed almost twice a decade. You know what I mean? They're going to be in a semifinal, bare minimum twice a decade. Like, I don't think that's a reach in saying that. So maybe because of that, they're not going to travel as well, knowing they'll probably have another opportunity in the near future to attend such a game. Whereas Texas, who's kind of been starving for this position, and they're at home, it could couple. I don't know ultimately what it's going to come down to. It's definitely going to be loud on both aspects, but I think if Ryan Day wins this game, he's definitely solidified. I still think he's seeing next season regardless, just to give him the opportunity.
Wow.
To face Michigan again, but if that fifth game doesn't fall their way, then I think he's finding the door.
All right, but I mean, CV knows best. Obviously, there's still to stand.
Does he?
I think he's got his pulse on the nation. He's in the message boards, but the message boards are full of crazed lunatics. So they're always going to be a little bit harsher.
I think we can all agree here that if you're a coach at the University of Ohio State, the one Achilles heel that you cannot have is Michigan. And that's just the reality of the situation we're in right now with Ryan Day. You can't really argue it. You can't really debate it. It factually is correct. That is the one team that just gives him fits year in and year out. Doesn't matter really who the coach is based on Sean Moore stepping up this year. For all of that to be said, right? For all of that to be true, at the same time, would you, Chief, if you're listening, Ohio State fans, whoever is listening right now, would you lose to Michigan to maybe 3 out of 4 years, every 4 years, but get a natty once out of those 4 years? Is that a fair trade-off?
So 1 in 3, you're 1 in 3 against Michigan over a 4-year period, but you get one national championship.
Correct.
Do
you do it?
You do it.
If you're
once,
an Ohio State fan,
you do it once.
And that's the tough part, dude. Is like, if you're not an Ohio State fan, I feel like because for me personally, that would be like Red Sox and Yankees. I do not care if it benefits the Red Sox in every way to lose this game, or they'll get cash considerations or whatever. I don't care. I cannot stand to see the city of New York smiling ever. Can't do it. Can't stand it. Refuse to do it. Same thing with the University of Michigan. I have a lot of hatred for the Wolverines. So you can understand my frustration with Ryan Day for not being able to take care of business when year in and year out, Ohio State has a top 3 most talented roster in football for the last, 5, 6 years, 7? You could even go longer than that, probably.
I think, yeah, you do it once, but if you had to live a whole lifetime of going like 8-34 or 8-36 against Michigan, and just knowing that all your Michigan fans just get to say like, we own you, don't give a shit about the national championships. We own you, and that is what it is. That'd be tough because you couldn't even hold the national championships over their head, right? It'd be like, well, we won a national championship. Well, we own you. We own you every year, 75% of the time. Yeah. So, well, hey, let's go to the picks. I'm going to go ahead. We've talked a lot about this game. I'm riding Ohio State hard. I'm probably going to take an alt line on them. The last game I was watching Texas in, they just were making too many mental errors. Chisholm talked about the scheme. The whole time I was sitting there, I was like, I cannot wait to bet against this team next week. I'm not going to bet on the over-under for this game. So that's just – I'm all over Ohio State every which way. Probably over some – I think I'm over some Ibuka, some props this week. I think this is the week where they go all out. They sell out against Jeremiah Smith, and he reaps the benefits of that as well. Maybe he's a little underappreciated in the market. So that's my quick read, and that's what I'm looking at.
So I'll take the opposite here. I think this is a phenomenal sell high spot on Ohio State and their offense. I know their defense is buzzing as well, but they just came out and put a shellacking out there on Oregon. And then Texas obviously struggling against a Big 12 opponent, doesn't look good. So I'm going to take the 5.5, 6, whatever it's at close. So I'm going to take Texas plus the points in this one. I think this is a buy low spot. I like to buy low and sell high, not the opposite. So we're going to try and implement that strategy this week. Don't have a play on the over-under. I think it might be inflated a little bit, but I would lean the under in this one as well. But not going to play it officially. But yeah, I'm gonna go with the Longhorns here. Hook 'em.
Wow. All right, Chisholm.
I'm pretty much exactly in line with TP on this one. I think, like I was saying, there's got to be some form of regression to the mean at some point. With numbers like Ohio State has had, and the fact that they haven't looked more dominant until post Michigan, I think that you can kind of look at the last two games. I would say is like their wake up call, if you will. I think that effect is going to have to wear off when you're riding as high as they are. That's kind of my prediction here. That's my hypothesis, if you will. I get it. They're in their peak form, and Texas is just not. But they also are boasting great numbers. Texas, they're averaging 34 points a game, and they're allowing 14. So very similar numbers to Ohio State. We talked about Ewers and Howard having similar numbers. I think that this is going to be a game that comes down to Will Howard proving it. This is Will Howard proving it more than it is Quinn Ewers. Game. This is the Will Howard game. If he can not turn, like if he just doesn't turn the ball over, I think Ohio State takes care of business. If he throws even a single interception at a critical moment, like not something right before half or whatever, and Texas has a chance to go back and score, I think that single thing will shift the momentum of the game entirely to the point where Texas will be able to go out, get a lead. And I think if Texas gets a lead in this game, they're going to be able to stay in it all the way through. It's the fourth quarter that has me really nervous right now, but I'm still going to rock with Texas anyway. Living in Austin, I got to do it. So give me the Horns +6. That's a lot of points in a playoff game between two Blue
Bevo. Go Buckeyes.
We get it, dude. All right. We get it.
All right, so Rent Money Majority says that it's going to be a Notre Dame Texas national championship
God,
game.
Adam, just for that fucking sly comment, I hope Indy gets blown the fuck out, you little prick.
I watched them lose to Northern Illinois week 2. I promise. It'll hurt, but not as bad as that. Any other closing thoughts?
Yeah,
I think it'll hurt much fucking worse than that, actually. I think it would hurt like a bitch.
It would.
You don't.
It would be brutal.
It would hurt.
Not the fact that you're this close. You know what I mean? So what? You lose in early September against a directional state school. That happens to the best of teams. You know what I mean? Oh wait, no, it fucking doesn't. But anyways, now I'll eat shit. I talked a lot of shit for Notre Dame. I'll give them their flowers here. I even made an excuse. Okay, phenomenal. You beat Indiana, aka the most losingest school in college football history. So that didn't impress me, but I put it on the table. I said, if you guys are able to beat Georgia, come out on top, then I would eat shit for everything I talked this season. And that's what this is now. You did. Granted, it was against a backup quarterback. I don't care. Kirby Smart's a good enough coach to be able to scheme up, know exactly what he's got with his guys, and put out a good product on the field. But still, you guys stepped up, won the turnover battle there, won the game, obviously. So kudos to them. They're buzzing. They're humming. It's a real fun team to watch at this point, real team-oriented. You know, there's not like one superstar. They don't have a Jeremiah Smith you can point to where like, hey, this guy can open the game. It's a total team effort in every aspect of the ball. They're running a clean program. So I think they're going to come out on top there. But, you know, obviously I've been wrong before. So
it makes two of us, brother. It makes two of us, especially with Jeremiah Love hurt. I think that was their guy. They don't really have that anymore. It's going to have to be a balanced game for sure.
But anyways.
All right. What's everybody's, you know, it's the 7th. It's, have you guys quit your New Year's resolution already? And what was it?
So my New Year's resolution is no more round robins. We discussed it, I believe, a few weeks back. It's a sucker's bet, and my eyes have opened towards that. I did take one this past weekend, but that was really the defining moment. It wasn't even fucking close. Anytime touchdown Sunday for the NFL, probably 12 of them out there. I think 2 of them maybe hit, not even close. So no more round robins for TP in 2025.
Just more red robin.
More red
Yum.
robin. And the classic office answer. I'd like to read a little bit more.
You've been telling me you've been doing reading nonstop. Maybe you just gotta turn those articles into books, and you'll feel like you're accomplishing more.
Yeah.
Just start printing them out.
Isn't that horseshit, though, the way we categorize if you've read a lot over the course of the year? You can be reading all day long, but you talk to some bookworm that cashed out 1 million books, 200 pagers, they'll stick their nose up at you. And that's just not fair.
Me reading the Washington Post is so much less intellectually stimulating than you with your smut. Shut up, Jenny. I don't need this.
Judah B. Jones reading ass.
Yeah, like congratulations on reading The Prisoner of Azkaban for the 19th time. You're an adult, you know. Maybe be one. Grow up.
It's a big year for smut books, though. I will say,
dude,
getting their own
smut
movie.
Books.
Nosferatu. Wow. Anyone?
I haven't seen it yet. I will be going soon. I just went and saw Complete Unknown. Thought it was good, not great.
Nice. God, you guys are dialed. All right, Chisholm, what about you? Have you given up your resolution yet?
I'm not a big resolution guy. I'll tell you why.
I like creating problems. I don't like solving.
I'm a big believer in if I want to do something, like don't put a special date on it. Don't wait. Just start right there. If I want to start going to the gym more, start right there in that moment.
So it's fair to say that if you were ever to get on a knee for Mrs. Chisholm, the time, place, and date would be spur of the moment.
Yeah, no planning involved. Let it come to me. No, I would definitely do some play. She's too type A for me to be that type B in that situation. But no, the one I will say, I did make a solemn vow, a solemn promise. I would get my ass into the pew. I would make it into church on Sundays. Promised Mother Chisholm. We're holding strong there so far.
God Country Football.
God Country, Notre Dame. That's the slogan, by the way. Domer for sure. Appreciate everybody for tuning in.
Wow, you guys are really fucking rude. Don't even want to ask me what my resolution is. Classic. That's wow. Classic Chisholm.
What are we keeping an eye on?
You know what? Mine was to get more sleep this year. You know, catching a few more winks. You know, I deserve it. No more bags underneath my eyes. I will say that this has been in opposition with, what I said at the beginning of the episode. New coffee machine, just cranking coffees left and right. That's been hindering my ability to fall asleep a little bit. So one of them's got to go. So maybe my resolution is going to be a little less coffee and a little bit more winks. Thanks for asking, Chisholm.
Love you, dude.
Let's put a bow on this shit.
I'm tired. TP's tired. Running back Jones, he's not tired. He's got that brand new coffee machine. He is wired, folks. Yeah. We're winding it down, putting a bow on this episode. We're starting to put a bow on the season. Starting to get me a little bit emotional. I miss it already, and we still have 3 games left. We have 3 games. 2 of them are happening within the next couple of days. Let's take advantage, make sure that we're dialed in. Ohio State and Texas, Penn State and Notre Dame. The majority is ruling Notre Dame and Texas. But we do have plays, I believe, on all sides, minus Penn State. I think that's the only play we don't have.
Fuck them.
Thanks for coming back to the Rent Money Pod. The hiatus was good for all of us, but we apologize for those that they're missing out on the Rent Money boys. So if you're back and listening, we appreciate you. College basketball season is still underway. Box Out Boys podcast, formerly known as Box Out Boys, is still coming to you with some action there. So check that out on the Pop Off Podcast Network. And a major shout out to Dondi, Deal No Deal Island. Keep your eye out. Sleep with one eye open. The devious, sinister banker. You never know where or when he's going to be popping up and causing problems. So shout out to Dondi, NBC, Peacock for supporting this episode. Maybe one day we'll find ourselves not only being sponsored by them, but employed by them. We'll see. Anything from you, Texas Pete?
Shout out NIU joining the Mountain West for the 2026 season.
Is that confirmed?
Yeah.
Confirmed.
I saw that they were meeting. I didn't see it was confirmed. That's huge. Yep. Breaking moves.
That's it. That's all I had.
Well, folks, I guess outside all that, let's make sure that we get Jack here. Mr. Jones, anything else from you before I start shutting her down?
No, shut it down.
All right, my friend.
Shut it down like it's a nuclear reactor system.
We'll workshop that. I feel pretty good about that. For this episode, I want to end it on a. I was gonna say I want to end it on a new segment. This is one that was not brought up during the production meeting. This is a new one, and if it works, great. If it sticks, we'll let it hang out on the bottom of our shoes. This is a little segment that we're gonna start using to end the pods called TP time. We're just gonna give the mic over to Texas Pete. Let him get whatever he's got on his chest off of it. No, there is more to be desired.
This is just great.
TP, floor is yours. I'm yielding the rest of my time to you.
Okay. So TP time, the inaugural segment. Here's a fun one for you guys. We had a rough week last week, but you know what made me cheer up just a little bit? When the bookie hit me up and I had to send it to an old college friend. So I sent it to a guy I haven't talked to in about 4 or 5 years now. And just seeing that put a nice little witty, comment when I was sending it over. Hopefully he smiled, didn't get a text, no conversation stemmed from it, but just knowing in my heart, probably got one of those chuckles on his side. Anyways, that's the TP Talk segment of the week. We appreciate you guys all for tuning in. College football playoff semifinals should be a good one here coming up this Thursday and Friday evenings at you. Before we go, though.
That's awesome. And there's another segment that Chisholm and I were workshopping off to the side at the production meeting. Texas Pete was uncharacteristically late. We called this one TP's Coaching Corner. TP's picked up a youth basketball team recently in his free time. If the pod isn't keeping him busy enough, TP, the question that we want to know is, who is your leading scorer and how does he get his buckets?
We got Braylon, who was our leading scorer on Saturday, was very, very impressed with the young man. Unfortunately, he fell short in the season opener. but he was our leading scorer that game with 2 points. Big bucket from him in the fourth to bring it within one score. I was really nervous. It was my coaching debut. I was goose egged through the first 3 quarters of the game, and I was starting to get really concerned, but he pulled it through for us. He got a bucket. We got another big bucket from Andrew Martinez, who's an absolute stud. He had a lot of good shots. None of them fell his way, but looking optimistic for Saturday.
Nice. Love it. TP's Coaching Corner. You can catch that next week following TP's thoughts or whatever. We'll workshop that one as well. So thanks, TP.
TP, do you walk in the locker room? How old are these kids?
7.
Not old enough to be in the locker room with them. Let's say that, Chisholm.
Yeah,
correct.
Not legally, anyways. But you walk in there, they're all 7 years old, looking up at you, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and you get them all sat down, and you're like, your family, your religion, and the Green Bay Packers, and they're just like, what the fuck? Jimmy V. Folks, thank you guys for tuning in. We're gonna go and wrap this thing up. We hopefully will have one more for you guys, putting a ball on this to preview the national championship. But from all of us here at the Pop Off Podcast Network and Rent Money Studios, we hope you're having a great start to your 2025. And we hope that more than anything else, your bank account is as well. And if it is, do us a solid. Go ahead, reach out, shoot them a text or a call, and tell your bookie that we say hi.
Say it ain't so, I will not go. Turn the lights off. Can't